Hey there guys, and welcome back to Tech Easily. So this is my second video of CSS in my CSS series, and in this video I will be teaching you guys how to change the background color, change the color of your text, and also how to change the size and the type of font that you guys have. I will be teaching you guys how to do this using the three methods that I mentioned in my last video, which included internal, external, and inline CSS referencing. And if you guys are interested to see all of that in action, then please keep on watching. Okay guys, so in my last video I went through the basics of CSS along with the referencing techniques. So if you guys are interested in that, I will leave a link to that video in the description box down below, and it should be appearing in the I button as well right now. But I'd highly recommend you to go through that first, because you just grasp the basic concept of what I'm going to be doing in this video, so it's really good you go through that first. But for now, again, I have my notepad open with the same file structure as I always do. Right now, I'm going to be creating a folder on my desktop, and I'm going to be calling this tutorial. And inside this folder is where my CSS file and my HTML file are going to go. So my first technique I will be using today will be external CSS referencing, so therefore my files are going to be stored inside this folder. Okay guys, so assuming that our website or this web page is going to be about a travel blog, what I'm going to do is, first of all, in my main body I'm going to put in my h1 tag, and this is also known as the header tag, which is basically going to display the heading of your website. So in our case, I'm just going to write down travel blog here. But a thing to note is that HTML, it has many of these header tags. So it goes from H1 all the way down to H6. And it's in this order that H1 is bigger than H2, and then H2 is bigger than H3, and so on, all the way up to H6, which will be the smallest in this case. So let's just put in travel blog here. Okay guys, so if I want to change the background color of my body in my web page, along with the color of the text inside of my h1 tag, to do all of these things, I'm going to go into my CSS file. I'm going to create my CSS file now. So first of all, I'm going to save my HTML file. So I'm going to save this file first before I go on and do the CSS stuff. So go into File, go into Save As. I am going to go into my tutorial folder inside of my desktop. I'm going to call this file travel. You can call it whatever you want, but just make sure you have the .html extension, differentiates what type of file it is. So that's really important. And then to this technique of external referencing is linking the CSS file inside of my HTML. So later on, I'm going to come back inside my head here, and I'm going to put in my link tag and then link my CSS file to my HTML. But for now, let's just go to our CSS file first. Okay guys, so I've literally just opened a blank notepad file, and inside here we wanted to, like I told you guys, I want to style my body first. So I want the background color of my body to be different. I don't want it to be white. So let's go ahead and put in our selector. So the selector in this case is going to be body. I'm going to open up my squiggly bracket and I'm going to close that off. And inside my declaration, I want to change the color, so the background color of the body. So what I'm going to put down for my property is going to be background color. Now notice how color is spelled. You don't put the U in. If you put the U in, it's not going to work. It works when there's no U inside. Okay, and then for the value here, I want the background color to be, just for example, I want it to be pink, and then the colon goes in between my property and my value, and then I close that off with a semicolon. Now let's save this file, link it to my HTML file, and test this out first before we go on and change the text color of my h1 tag for the travel blog title. So let's go into File, go into Save As, and again, if you notice from my desktop, I'm going to go into my tutorial folder, which is right over here. I'm going to call this file style, because that's what we're doing. We're styling our HTML page and putting .css as the extension. Please put this in. This is what differentiates the files, like I always say, and click save. Now if you try and test this out with your HTML file, it's not going to work because there's no link between my two files right now. They're just two separate files in a folder called tutorial. So there's no link right now. So let's go back into our HTML file. Let's go inside our head, like I told you in my last video. Every time you link CSS, it's going to go inside my head. Even if I do internal CSS referencing, it's still going to go inside my head. So let's open up our link tag. Okay, so I'm going to put in link rel is equal to style sheet inside of my quotation marks. And then I'm going to put in the type is equal to, again, open your quotation marks, text // CSS, and then the href. What goes inside is the name of your CSS file. So the name I have here is style and the type is CSS. So let's put that into our quotation marks, style.css. Now I've gone through each one of these, so the rel, the type, the href in my last video. If you want to pause this video right now and have a quick recap of them, if you want to understand what these are about. But for now, let's save this file. So file save. And now what we have, guys, is a connection between these two files. They're linked together. So I have added the link into my HTML file. What it's going to do is, hopefully for the body here, I have put in the background color to be pink. So when I run this inside of my browser, it should appear as pink. So just save, Control and S. Okay, and so let's test this out. I'm going to go into my folder, and again, like always, double click your HTML file. And as you guys can see, the background color of my body has been turned into pink. So if this doesn't happen, guys, so if your background color doesn't change, even if you have linked them together, what can most likely be the problem is your href. So either you're spelling this wrong. So if I change this to styles.css, and if I save it again, and if I test this out in my browser, you can see the background color hasn't changed. So that can happen I've seen that happen in a lot of cases. So just be careful, again, that you get the names right of your files, and it should work. Another thing we can do, you guys, is just say you want the background color behind your H1 tag to be different than the rest of the body. So the way you can change this is exactly the same way as we did before. Inside my selector, I'm going to put in my H1 and then open up my squiggly bracket again, and I'm going to close that off, and inside again, I'm going to be using background color because that's what I want to change. So let's put in the background color as my property, this colon, and then I'm going to put in, just say you want this to be gray, and then semicolon. I'm going to save this. The great thing, you guys, is, like I mentioned before, is that our CSS file is linked to our HTML file. Every time we make a change in our CSS file, we don't need to touch the code in our HTML file. So I can literally just save this and run my HTML file in my browser, and I don't even have to touch any of the code in my HTML page. So let's test this out. And as you guys can see, it has changed the background color of my behind my H1 tag to be gray. Now that's a bit dark for me. I'm just going to go back and change that into something a bit lighter. So I'm just going to say light gray, Control and S, and just, you can reload it by just pressing the refresh button. Now that looks a bit better. Now guys, before we go into changing the font color, the size, the type, etc., let's actually put stuff into this page. So for the travel blog, I'm going to put in the P tag, and inside this P tag I'm going to put in information relating to this travel blog, And basically, you guys, what the p tag does is it defines a paragraph. So this p tag here, it's going to define our paragraphs for us. Basically, it's going to put in some space, which is also known as margin, before and actually after as well, each of the p elements. But the great thing about CSS is that you can even modify these margin properties as well. So that's one of the other benefits of CSS as well. We can get into that on later on videos. It's a bit complicated for now. What I'm gonna do, you guys, is I've just taken some random text and I'm gonna paste that into my p tag here. And I'm just gonna put this in separate lines so you guys can see better. You can put in any text relating to any thing that you want your web page to be about. You can have a theme here. I'm just going to keep on doing this until I get to the last one. It's actually a lot of text. Okay. Now that we have the text in place, I just want to save this and test this out first before we go on to making any other changes. Okay guys, so this is what it looks like right now. So the text is in black, but it's not really standing out. Let's go ahead and change the color of the text first before we move on to something else. So as you guys know that my text is inside my p tag here, so you probably guessed what I have to do. I am going to go into my CSS file, my style.css. I'm going to create a new selector, and this time it's going to be p. Again, it's the same process each time. For the property this time, how you change the color of text is you use the property called color. So changing the background color was known as background color property, but this time the property we have to use is known as color. Again, no u in there. And then I'm going to put in my colon, put in white, because I want to change the color of my p text to be white, and then the semicolon. Again, I'm just going to save this and let's test it out again. So there you go guys, the background color of my text inside my p, like the whole p tag, is changed to white. And I'm quickly actually going to do the same thing for my header because I think the black doesn't look that good. So what you can do is, if you want to change a couple of properties within the same selector, so H1 already has a background color of light gray, as you guys can see, but I also want to change the text color and I want it to be white. What I'm going to do is just copy this line from my p tag, and underneath this first one I'm going to put this in. And what that's going to do is change the color of my H1 header to be white. As you guys can see, that worked and it looks so much better. And this is how you basically change multiple properties. You can literally have a long list of many other things in this same selector as well. So that's how you change the color of your text in CSS. Let's go on to seeing how we can change the font type or the font family in CSS. So just say I like the way the header looks, I'm not going to change that, but the font type for my P here, I don't like this one. So speaking in CSS terms, I want to change the font family of my P tag here. So let's go into our CSS file. And since it's the P tag here, I want to change the font family for that. So I'm going to go here. On the next line, I'm going to put in font family. I'm actually going to move this down so you guys can see. And then my colon. Now what the font family does is it defines the font for this specific element. So in this case for P, I want my font type to be, for example, I want it to be Arial. Now you need to put in quotation marks here because that's just how it works, and also the semicolon at the end. Now guys, I didn't point this out to you before, but the importance of semicolon, it's very, very, very important. If you don't put this in, your code is not going to work, because this is how you differentiate one declaration from the next one. Now if you're using something like Visual Studio Code, it does give you an indication, like an error message, that you have not closed off your declaration. So in Notepad, that's not going to happen, so you're going to need to remember to always close off your declarations with semicolons. Now, Control and S or save, and let's reload our browser. And as you guys can see, it has changed the font family or the font type to Arial for my P tag, but it hasn't touched this one. If I wanted it to also change that for my header, I would just go into my H1 here, copy this whole line, the font family, and paste it in, but I actually want it to be like that so you guys can see the difference. And that's basically how you change the font type of your text thing. Oh yeah guys, one other thing to note is that if you want your font type to be different, you can literally just Google up some CSS font types and you can get a whole list. You can change this to this one, but I'm just going to go back to Arial because I want to use that one. But what you can do is you can Google up font family types in CSS. You'll get a whole list and you can literally just copy and paste the one you want into here and it will do the job for you. But for now, let's go into the last part of this video, and which is to make this text bigger, because in comparison to my H1 tag, so this is pretty big and then my text is too small, like you can't really read it. I want to make it bigger. So again, going back into my CSS file, it's so useful that you don't need to go into HTML each time. It really does make a big difference. Again, I am inside my P tag. If you go back to this, that text is inside my P. So that's where I'm going to go. And again, I'm going to go into the next line. And how you change the font size in CSS is you basically use the property called font size. So that's an easy one. And then you're going to put in the pixels that you want it to be. So for example, I want it to be 20 pixels big. And you guys, pixels are a unit of length. There's other types that you can use. So you can use EMs or centimeters. There's lots of other ones that you can use as well. But for the basics, I'm just going to go ahead and use this. And then save my file and reload. So you guys can see that has instantly made it a lot bigger. Now you can go as big or as small as you want. It just depends on you. Now this is all that I was going to cover in this video, but to me, I want to center align my text here. I don't like the way it's on the left here. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to do that as well while we're here. So as you guys know, that was in my H1 tag. So what I want to do is go into my H1 inside my CSS, so H1 selector. What I'm going to use as my property is known as text align. And this is what is used for alignment in CSS. So there's many options you can use with this property that come with this property. And these include left, right, center, justify, or inherit. I will go through each one of them in detail in my later videos, but just to center the text, I'm literally going to say center, and that will do the job for us. So save and reload. And as we can see, that has made it go into the center and looks so much better. And what it did is it centered the content or this text between the left and right edges. So it's okay guys, so since I promised that I would be showing you guys how to internally and also inline reference the CSS, because in my last video I just went through it, I didn't give you a demo. So in this video, really quickly at the end, I want to show you how you guys can achieve the same result with first internally referencing it. So what I'm going to do is Control A and Control C, or just highlight all of your text from your CSS file. And I want to copy that, and here inside my head, like I showed you in my last video, what you need to do to internally reference your CSS into your HTML is use this style element. And what I'm going to do is paste in all my code from my CSS inside the style, which is inside my head in my HTML page. And what this should do is the exact same thing as what we did before. So let's run this. As you guys can see, I have achieved the same result, but this time I hadn't linked any files. So right now my HTML file, even if I go and delete my CSS file, and close that off first. Yeah, it's closed. So even if I go and delete my CSS file and save my HTML file and reload this page, you can see it has made no difference if my CSS file exists or not, because this time we're internally referencing CSS using the style tag. Now the last one, to inline reference CSS, I'll just show you how to do it for one element, and you guys can see how to do it for the rest as well. So I'm just going to take out the body one here. I'm going to copy the background color for the body to be pink, and I'm going to take this out from my style. I just want to show you guys how to do it for inline referencing. I want to refresh and reload my browser. And as you guys can see, it's working in the exact same way. So basically the point is, it doesn't matter if you internal, external, or inline CSS reference, just use the same method that I showed you guys. But obviously I would still prefer to use the external referencing. Like I told you in my last video, it saves you a lot of time when your website gets bigger, but this is how you do these things using the three methods in the middle. Okay guys, so that's it for today's video. I hope you guys learned about how to put the background color of your text, change the color of your text, the font size, how to align your text, and how to use 3 different methods of CSS referencing to change the style of your HTML pages using CSS. So until we code again, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and please leave any recommendations or questions in the comment sections down below, and I will try and get to them as quick as I can, and I will see you guys in my next video.